Howdy, everybody. This is the Roaming Prepper channel, and I'm your host, Pete. Thanks you once again for joining me. Sorry, everything's crooked on my desk today. Um, so, how legit is this? Let's talk about what I'm referring to and why I think it may not be the end of the game for this particular subject. I'll be right back. All right, well, welcome back, everybody, and don't forget to like and subscribe. If you want to leave a comment below the video or a question, I'll be happy to answer it as soon as I get around to getting some free time. If I don't make my own premiere, normally I premiere these videos with a live chat, which I normally try to be in. Sometimes I fail to be in my own chat. Feel free to reach out to me at theroamingprepper@gmail.com, or you can comment, like I said, below the video. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about the Nostradamus of elections. There's a professor in Washington University the American University in Washington, who has supposedly predicted 8 of the last 10 US elections accurately, and he uses a 13 topic system. Now, before we go into it, the guy actually did predict that Trump would beat Clinton in 2016, and nobody believed him, and he was right. He's predicting something different this time around, and I looked at the way he broke it down, and there's certain things that are missing, and I think he's making the call too soon. But I'm going to show you just so you can do it. And I want to state for the record that I applaud somebody trying to put a scientific spin. Oh, seriously? A scientific spin, Range Rover, everything. Good Lord, all this stuff. Okay, gotta love those advertisements. Okay, he tried to quantify 13 keys, 13 topics that allow you to analyze the election and make a prediction. So I'm going to read his prediction and then who he thinks this particular 13 keys or which of these keys or favorable items will work and in whose favor. So whether the sitting president's party gains seats in the House during the midterms, they actually lost seats. So he says uh, that would favor Trump. Whether the incumbent is running for re-election, that would favor Trump because technically Kamala is the incumbent. Whether the party in the White House is facing a primary. Now they said this favored Harris. Now I don't know what he means by that, but I'll come back to that later. Whether there is a third party contestant says will favor Harris. The state of the short term economy. He says will favor Harris. Now, bear with me, this is his calls. State of the long term economy, Harris. Whether the sitting president's party has made adjustments to national policy, Harris favors Harris. Whether there's social unrest, Harris. Whether the president faced major scandals, favors Harris. According to the professor, charisma of the challenger, Harris. Charisma of the incumbent favors Trump. So, and then were there any major fiascos in foreign policy? NA, whether the sitting president had successes in foreign affairs. NA, not applicable. Now, this is from the New York Post, and the person writing it actually says he dubiously argued that President Biden had not weathered a major scandal during his administration. Because consternation about his age and scandal-scarred son Hunter don't broach partisan lines in a specific way. Foreign policy is tricky, he says. You could actually flip these. The Biden administration is deeply invested in the war in Gaza, which is a humanitarian disaster. So he does admit that the foreign policy topics, the two on the bottom, may actually wind up in favor of Trump. He said it's kind of a little early. So let's go back through his topics, and I'm going to expand these a bit just so we can talk. Oh, well, maybe I won't. Okay. Never mind. Let's try that again. Whether the sitting president's party gains seats in the House during the midterms favors Trump. The Democrats lost seats, which I have seen that pattern before with Obama. Uh, was the incumbent running for reelection? Yes, the incumbent, Biden and Harris, are running for reelection, favors Trump. Whether the party in the White House is facing a primary. Now, I don't know exactly what he means. Harris was kind of appointed. When Biden stepped down, Harris was appointed. So I guess he's saying if she did, because she didn't have a challenger, that's good for her because she didn't get picked apart by her own party. You could say yes, but then there's the next one. There's a third party contestant. Well, in reality, there was, and it was a Democrat, but they wouldn't let him primary against Harris, which was RFK. So he wound up becoming a third party contestant. And then he wound up endorsing the opposition, Trump. So I'm wondering if those two are truly applicable because if you go like to Clinton, Bush, Obama's era, there wasn't all this weirdness. You every now and then you had a third party candidate come out and Green Party screwed Clinton, Ross Perot screwed Bush. Like there were certain things that have happened in the past where there was a third party contestant. But in this case, you would have had a primary, but the incumbent administration wound up running off the two potential people who would have run against Harris, which would have been Tulsi Gabbard and RFK. Then one of them wound up becoming a third party contestant, and now he just shut his contest to endorse and jump on the bandwagon with Trump. So I'm not sold that Harris really didn't face a primary. Harris, the administration or the party forced the competition internally out. And in doing so, I really think they made a mistake because they didn't give a chance for RFK, Tulsi, and Harris to go at it, have a debate, and break it apart. And so, in light of that, because even Trump had another Republican competitor, and then that person ultimately dropped out. They weren't gaining traction, but they weren't forced out. They just didn't gain traction. Nobody stopped them. That's not what happened to RFK. They wouldn't even let RFK debate Harris, or Tulsi debate. Tulsi decimated Harris in 2020. So I yeah, I'm not sold on that. The state of the short-term economy does not favor Kamala Harris. Now, you can make arguments the long term. Well, they put this policy and that policy in place. It's hard to predict because we won't see the effects for 7, 10 years, right? Um, but the short-term economy, we have 30% inflation in groceries. We have at least double gas prices. In some places, it is triple. There is an inflationary effect. The job numbers just got, let me see, we are September 6th of 2024. Sorry, my sinuses, guys. September 6th of 2024. And right now, they just announced last month's employment numbers got moved down by 1 million jobs. Mind you, that includes full time and part time. So even part time lost 1 million jobs. That's bad. But what they did, they announced, "Oh, look at these great numbers." And then a month later, when the new numbers come out, look at these great numbers. Oh, by the way, last month we kind of fucked up. It was 1 million high. They're playing voodoo with the numbers. I do not believe the short term economy at all favors Kamala Harris. I actually think it's the opposite. So I don't know what his criteria is. Now, to be fair to the professor, he may be looking at, well, the consumer price index is between here and here, and I don't know, like the GDP grew by 2%, so or 1% or more. So that's his criteria. So again, I don't know all the little specifics, but I do not think this is accurate. Whether the city's sitting president's party had made adjustments to national policy, that they did. They made quite a few changes under the Biden Harris administration. I don't know how he's measuring it, but if a big change is a good thing for whatever reason, then yeah, that would technically favor her. whether there's social unrest. Now, this one's interesting because the social unrest in 2020 actually came from the far left and a group of Nazis who some people wonder where the hell they came from. I thought the KKK was done like 20 years ago, so I don't know where the hell those guys came from. But is there social unrest? Now, the question is, what is social unrest? Does it have to be Antifa and BLM protests? Because if there was a Republican incumbent, there would be a bunch of protests. There's not. But the Tren de Aragua, the Cuban gangs, the rapes, the murders, the violence, the criminality, I would argue there is indeed social unrest right now. It's just not protesting in the street with signs yet. And then I question, well, we had these massive protests right outside the DNC where the Democrats and the pro-Palestine, who are also on the left, were fighting with each other. And that fight actually alienated the Jewish Israeli supporters in the Democratic Party. So he says there's not social unrest. I would argue there is because we've had protests for months. So I don't think his call on this is valid. Now, I don't know what the magnitude is. Does it have to be riots for 5 weeks straight, or is it just intermittent? But there is a lot of social unrest. There's a lot of crime. So again, they don't go into the specifics, and the professor even admits, this is kind of what I'm seeing from where he is. One of the problems with academia is they come up with great ideas, right? And they explain it to guys like me who are the pragmatic engineer in the field, who I'm like, I have to apply this, and we get it. But then when we do it in the real world, you're like, well, wait a minute. No, I get what you were saying, but that's in a lab. That's in a hypothesis. When you're out on a street, there's something different happening. And I think this is the case here. Whether the president faced major scandals. Right now, Harris technically doesn't have a major scandal. Biden, one could argue, as the professor mentioned at the bottom of the article, his son and China, there may have been issues, but now that Biden's stepping away, that kind of goes with him. And so I'm not sure how it would affect. Now, they say the charisma of the challenger and the charisma of the incumbent, but then he put Harris for one and Trump for the other. So I don't know exactly what his criteria is here. Does he mean if the charisma of the challenger, which would be Trump in this case, people don't like him, so it helps Harris? Because I don't necessarily think that's the case. Um, you either love Harris or hate her, and you love Trump or hate them. Like, I don't think there's a big move. And the charisma of the incumbent helps Trump. That kind of contradicts itself. So I'm not sure what that is. The last two really annoy the shit out of me because he NA'd them. Yeah, not applicable, not applicable. How can you not applicable? Let's think about this for a second, my friends. And these two are the major fiascos in foreign policy, and the sitting president had success in foreign affairs. Right now, we have two hot wars. Not special forces, not rogue groups, not deniable groups. The largest country in the world by geography, which is Russia, invaded the largest country in Europe, which was Ukraine. They are in the second, third year of a war, a full-blown war with helicopters, tanks, jets, soldiers, artillery, drones, trench warfare. It looked like someone took World War One, Battlefield One, Call of Duty, and mixed them all together. And guys, shh. Anyway, sorry, folks. Delivery guy. Um, and mixed all these wars together because you have drones and trench warfare going on at the same time. Absolutely crazy. So we could argue that right now, not only do we have a war that directly or indirectly involves at least two OPEC members, which would be Iran and Russia, but it also involves two nuclear powers, which are Russia and Israel. Yes, think about this for a second, and I don't know, a lot of people haven't mentioned it. There are two nuclear equipped countries right now in a war with somebody. And it's not like, oh, a peacekeeping mission of the US or an intervention by the Russians. No, it's a straight up war. Both of them. Jets, tanks, troops on the ground. And right now, Israel is going scorched earth across Gaza, and Russia and Ukraine are just slapping the shit out of each other, and there's stuff burning everywhere. You can't tell me that that is not significant. You can't tell me that you can't NA, not applicable, stuff like that. It is not a counterinsurgency. It is not, oh, we're going to go and, do peacekeeping. These are straight up acts of war, open warfare. And that's something that I think this professor, to his credit, I get what he's trying to do. He's trying to put some kind of science to the predictions uh, of this forecast for presidential elections, and that's great. I don't think he's got it right this time. Now, you may not like Trump, you may not like Harris. That's fine. I just want to look at the bullet points he's using, because I think he's made multiple bad calls. Now, it may not mean, I mean, if you added him up, it may not mean Trump's going to win anyway. It may not mean Kamala is going to win anyway. But I don't think it's going to be 7 bullet points versus 2. I don't agree with that. It might be 6 versus 7, 5 versus 6. It's going to be very tight to the end of this election. Now, what I do expect to the social unrest thing, you have a lot of players have been introduced to the country. Some say 5 million, some say 15 million. That is more people than some states in the US. If you took all those people and dumped them in a state, the state would never be the same. And that's what's happening. Also note that these gangs are showing up in strategic places. Denver, LA, Houston, Dallas, New York, Chicago. How do we know if all those immigrants are not operators? You don't need all of them. You just need to sneak 5 to 10 in any given city. Tell them, go get jobs, don't talk to each other, hide in the cities, and wait for the signal, whatever the signal may be. I don't think this professor's right. I do respect and appreciate he's trying to put some kind of system in place, and he's had reasonably good success. Now, I heard he predicted 8 out of the last 10, but then in one thing they say he predicted all the presidential elections correctly except for 2, but they didn't say how far back. And then another one he said, well, he predicted the last 10 elections, but they don't say, was it the last 10 presidential elections? Because that goes back all the way to, I mean, you go backwards. So you have Biden, Trump, Obama, Bush, Clinton, uh, Papa Bush, Reagan. So has he predicting him all the way back since Reagan in the 80s? Because that's not what I get. So they wordsmithed it a little bit, at least what the presentation. Now, New York Post did a pretty good job of calling him out and say, hey, you know what? Is it 10 elections total? Or is it 10 presidential elections? Because those happen every 4 year, elections happen every 2, right? And there's a big difference as to what's going on there. So I'm going to do a little more digging on that. But folks, you're going to see this all over the news. Kamala's going to win. Kamala's going to win. Everyone's saying it. But the oddball places, Vegas betting, Jersey, Atlantic City betting, stock market, corporate predictions, or the opposite. I would bet more on the guys whose ass is on the line for billions of dollars of investment or gambling than people who are like, I just want to make political points. So take it how you will. Do some homework. I just thought I'd do a little bit of an analytic on the analysis. And it's important for us to question the numbers. One of the things that pissed me off the most during 2020, trust the science. The science is irrefutable. Bullshit. Physics is irrefutable. Force equals mass times acceleration. Gravity will always work unless you're on the moon, because it's different on the moon. There's certain things that don't change, but science learns. Okay, they say science is irrefutable horseshit. 150 years ago, they were putting leeches on people who had anemia because they had to bleed them. Now we know it's an iron deficiency. People 150 years ago had no idea what sickle cell was. They had no idea. People would die and they'd say he died of bad smells. That was one of the things they thought the plague was about, bad smells. Now it's funny because the bad smells, the doctors wore those beaks, and in doing so actually created a filter system that prevented the contaminants from getting the doctors. That's why a lot of plague doctors actually didn't get sick. They did it right, but for the wrong reason. I think we have the same thing here. I think he's trying to put some science to it. I don't think he's made the right calls. I do respect the fact that he actually presented it and laid out his criteria within, a certain framework, so we as the informed citizen can go and look and see what we think. But in any case, folks, that's it for this one. I just think this guy made a wrong call. I don't think unless he's got some weird criteria I'm not understanding. It seems contradictory, the way he spun it out. Who knows? He's probably another cog in the wheel of the globalists. But in the meantime, you guys be good, be safe, and question everything. You don't have to go and burn things down. Just question the shit out of it. That's why we're a free country. You guys be good.